Alrighty boys, welcome back once again to another video. How you guys doing? Guys, today we're going to be taking a look at the all new gameplay and details regarding the upcoming Stasis Subclasses that were revealed for Destiny 2 at Gamescom 2020 just yesterday. Bungie dropped a brand new trailer that you're seeing in the background, as well as completely new raw gameplay of Stasis in action. It shows quite a lot about how these subclasses will function, synergize with one another, and Bungie even throws out the names of them as well. Outside the trailer and raw gameplay, Bungie also dropped quite a bit of screenshots to go over the new armor and the weapons that we'll be finding within Europa's winter landscape. Today we're not going to be doing face cam because we have quite a lot of more beautiful things to look at, including Stasis in all of its glory. So without further ado, let's jump into all the new details, starting off with a complete breakdown of the Stasis subclasses, starting with the Warlock, then Hunter, then the Titan. Within the new trailer that Bungie dropped, we ended up seeing the Shade Binder for the Warlock. The super summons a staff which will shoot projectiles that freeze enemies when they hit, and it also has an AoE effect which can pop all frozen enemies and kill them. This AoE effect is called Shatter according to Bungie's website, and basically causes the raining of stasis crystals to fall upon and destroy your enemies. So with this staff, you are going to have one attack which is going to basically burst an AoE freeze, and another attack to then break all of your frozen enemies. The grenade, from what we can see the Warlock using in the Crucible, is called the Stasis Field, and this is going to slow down any of the targets inside, and I presume freeze them as well. Now, the melee ability that we see the Warlock using after using this grenade is actually going to be its staff from the super, except from the looks of it, it's only going to be able to freeze your enemies without having the added benefit of being able to shatter them as well. Now, in PvP, from the looks of it, it seems to suppress your targets, which is going to make them incapable of using their supers or abilities, which can be extremely strong, as we see a Golden Gun getting completely knocked out of his super when the Warlock uses his melee ability. Now, the last thing that I want to mention is actually the class ability for the Warlock, as it looks very interesting. The last thing worth noting is going to be that this class ability has an AoE freeze for whenever any enemies come inside of it. So not only do we have the Healing Rift and the Empowering Rift, but from the looks of it with this Stasis subclass, the Warlocks will also be able to freeze enemies and go on the offensive without the need of actually using their weapons. Moving on from the Warlock, we have the Revenant, which is the Hunter. The super for this class is going to have you throwing 2 ice picks. One of those ice picks is going to summon what looks like an ice storm that's going to stun and freeze any of the enemies inside, and the second one that you throw will ignite an explosion that fractures any of the enemies frozen nearby. So this super right here has absolute insane amounts of AoE potential and looks extremely strong for PvE. The melee ability that we see the Hunter using is throwing shurikens, and these look extremely powerful in PvP, as you will see them bouncing off of a wall, off of another wall, and straight into 2 enemies back to back. So this melee ability right here is basically throwing knives on steroids, and I freaking love it. As a side note, we also see that Hunters are doing a ground pound in these trailers with their ice picks from the air, and it shatters any of the enemies in the immediate area, so I figured that this was worth noting. Aside from this, we also see the Hunter using 2 grenades, one of which the Stasis Field and the Crucible clip, which we saw the Warlock using, as well as the Ice Wall, which is basically going to allow you to build your own cover or build your own ground to walk on, and the amount of possibilities with this are pretty much truly endless. Now, moving on from the Hunter, we have the Behemoth, which is the Titan. Now, the super for this class basically looks like a slower Fist of Havoc, which features an AoE freeze blast on every single slam, followed by the summoning of ice pillars in multiple directions. Just like Fist of Havoc, you're also able to slam forward on the ground with your fist or shoulder, and overall it just seems like a slower and more devastating super compared to the swift get in, get out kind of stuff that we're used to seeing with Fist of Havoc. Now, we don't see anything outside of the Ice Wall grenade from the Titans, and we also don't see any kind of form of special melee ability unless you count him sliding into enemies and breaking them, as this could be something that is exclusive to the Titan, as I haven't seen any other class do this in any of the gameplay that we have been given. Now, that's pretty much everything that we can see from the raw gameplay and from the trailers, but Bungie also announced on their website that we are going to be getting a very in-depth look to every single one of the classes, starting with the Warlock on September 1st, the Titan on September 3rd, and the Hunter on September 8th. So all of the observations within this video are basically going to be expanded upon come these dates, dates for these specific classes. Now, that is pretty much everything that we can observe through the trailers until we actually get that established date for every single class. So let's go ahead and move on from the Stasis subclasses and talk about the loot that we'll actually be able to get from Europa, including the armor and the weapons. Starting off with the weapons, here is a screenshot of the designs of the weapons that we'll be finding on Europa, and I gotta say, I kind of like the design of these weapons. It's definitely something a bit out there, something that you really haven't ever seen before, and I really like the design of the auto rifle, which you can see in the middle right, as well as the sidearm. I think these weapons look really cool, and I like the color of choice as it's really different from anything that we've seen before. Now, moving on from the weapons, we also have some very good and very up-close screenshots of how the armor is going to look on Europa, the actual planetary gear that we can get. So with this first screenshot, you can see the Titan in front, the Hunter to the left, and the Warlock on the right. I'm not gonna lie, they absolutely butchered the Warlock. I love Warlocks, honestly, but the armor for the Warlock in this screenshot looks pretty freaking ugly. The Hunter looks okay, but I gotta say, the Titan is definitely rocking a very sexy helmet in this picture. Moving on from that, we actually get another screenshot with the Hunter and the Warlock front and center, and the Hunter obviously has a huge backpack on his back. I'm not sure if this is a part of the chest piece or the cloak that comes with this Hunter, but definitely something interesting. You can also see the same thing on the Warlock. And then moving on from this one, we can see yet another screenshot of these Guardians in action from what looks like a snowstorm. Now, the only other stuff that we were given in terms of extra screenshots and any other extra content regarding Beyond Light is actually some looks at enemies that are using stasis. So within this first screenshot right here, you can see a fallen Vandal, which is of course completely covered in the darkness, completely covered in stasis. Moving on from that, we can then see a Dreg, which kind of looks like he's about to take a shit, but you know, there's a Dreg. And then moving on from the Dreg, we have a fallen Servitor. So all of these enemies looking very interesting, and definitely showing that the enemies will also be able to use stasis on us as well. Now, aside from that, that is pretty much everything that we got from the Gamescom 2020 reveal in terms of Beyond Light content and previews and everything like that. Overall, I do like what Bungie showed. I like the fact that we got to see the armor close up, the fact that we got to see these weapons, and the fact that we got to see some of these supers more so close in action. Bungie also announced in their TWAB, because they did come out with a This Week at Bungie post, they announced in their TWAB that they're going to be making some changes to the Solstice of Heroes ornaments and basically making them glow a bit more, as they were advertised to be very glowy in the Eververse store, and they're not exactly the most glowy armor pieces in the game right now, as well as talking about some sleeper node issues, and they basically talk about how they're going to make the sleeper node stuff a bit easier to deal with to get the weapon and basically do anything that you need to before Beyond Light comes out. Aside from that, guys, that is pretty much all of the news for today's video. We did an entire Stasis subclass breakdown, showed off all of the new weapons and the loot that you can get from Europa, as well as a bunch of screenshots of some of the new enemies and a bit of a light coverage of the TWAB. So guys, let me know what you guys think down in the comments down below of this video. I hope that this video was informative and helped you guys out learning a bit more about Destiny Beyond Light, and thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.